So I'm doing a stream again, the day after the previous one because I want to see if we can get some people in here this time around. And the topic at hand is kind of based off the last week of the mourning period, at least for some people, for HW's death. Um, and I remember distinctively that I had pointed out that he was an example of a politician that I did not agree with, um, but that there was enough redeeming qualities about their tenure in office, things that they did over the course of their career, that I could then say, oh, this is someone I can tolerate, I can at least respect to some extent. And when I saw a lot of the liberal commentators that I normally watch and frequent the content of, seemingly employing what I felt to be a litmus test in regards to how they, spoke about him. I didn't think that was right, but it harkened me back to my general feelings for Ron and Rand Paul. Um, to give a little bit of history, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the channel before. I was in eighth grade when Ron Paul ran the second time around in 2012, and he has the distinction of being the first presidential candidate I ever supported. The non-interventionalism was very attractive to me. I couldn't quite in my mind fathom why we had to be in all of these different wars. We're currently bombing 7 countries. We weren't at that point, but you get the idea. It was a fascinating contrast to what I saw as just the status quo of what we already had before. And Rand Paul, even though not as in my opinion, not as revolutionary a figure, still is someone that on foreign policy I tend to agree with more than a lot of people. And what I always thought was so interesting about them is that they're the, on social issues, complete standard Republican. All the little backwards thinking that go, at least in my opinion, that goes along with being a member of that party that's currently an elected official, because we have log cabin Republicans and other people that affiliate with the party but explicitly belong to a branch due to their disagreements with the general model associated with the party. Let me say hello to O'Donohue. Also, you hurt my feelings, O'Donohue. You said some mean stuff, so just throwing it out there. But yeah, I thought it was funny that these two people in particular are so different from the remainder of the. You know what you said? I don't understand those videos. And then I go and look up in my email and I find out that you actually had seen one of those and left a comment on it. You did say that. Oh, I thought you were saying you didn't say that after I wrote the. Okay, the thing is time to not be on time with what I say. You said something very bad, and I just told you what it was. I was so heartbroken. I went, no, not O'Donohue. We say hello, Dirk. I missed you yesterday, Dirk. I was trying to do a stream about remembering World War II and just what exactly I could talk about relating to that. I remember you commented on the documentary style videos rather that I was proposing. And I found myself more fascinated with the history of other countries and just the way they work. So I had a little brief thing in that other stream yesterday, which was very short because I didn't have anybody go in there. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to sit here and talk to myself for 5 minutes. So I sat back and I, waited and waited. And I left a little bit of information that kind of hinted at what I was interested in doing. Maybe you saw, maybe you didn't. Yeah, I think by itself it functions as a good quote unquote introductory course to what I'm attempting here. You know what video was, O'Donohue? You said it in the last stream before this one. You came in there with those two guys that were talking about the USSR, and then that other guy that said something about the foreign policy of Estes Kufafer and all that stuff that had nothing to do with anything. What else is significant here? Going back to the topic at hand, because I actually have people who comment, why didn't you stay on topic? Even though they see that I'm speaking about it, and then when somebody comes in there, a lot of times I get derailed because we're talking about something else. Whatever. But going back to what I was saying, I thought he was interesting, Ron Paul, and I was I don't know, O'Donohue. You tell me. You already said it. You answered your own question earlier, but I thought he was interesting, and I also gained a lot of respect for him when the primary ended and he refused to endorse Romney or Obama because he said that it was the same thing or something to that effect. And this is before I found out that Obamacare, for example, was written by the Republicans, or rather their conservative think tank of the Heritage Foundation. So it's funny to think about that comment years after, later after you find out a little bit more stuff. I think he's opposed to the war on drugs too, which is an even bigger plus. You don't even want to know what thinks of me. I have no idea. You probably said something mean about him in his comment section. I don't even think you know what he looks like, and you probably commented in some bullying way, and we're trying to fight against that. So, go and look over here. What happened to Dirk? Oh, I hope he didn't leave the stream to go watch the other stream. that seems entirely feasible. But I know that with Rand, I always thought of him as just not keeping that same line of thinking. Like I remember he had the thing where he filibustered or protested verbally it was some big event with the nomination of John Brennan during the Obama years for I think that was CIA director, and it was this big thing we were talking about. I was a fan of Obama during the campaign until he reneged on his promises against the surveillance. I was like, whoa. And those are the kind of things that you almost never see any of these politicians talk about. But with him, I can't go and sit here and say that he's someone that is necessarily against the oligarchy, the issue of money in politics, because he called I believe it was the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform a dangerous piece of legislation, and tried to say that there was some other recent statement he made about mismanaged. We have all these laws relating to it, so he was complaining about the regulations on it, which are already very minimal in my opinion, in the position of many others. So I can't lump him as someone I would think is just cool or whatever. Have you ever no O'Donohue? I don't know what that has to do with anything. People just come in there and they say something out of nowhere. At least the other two people, when they were talking about things that had nothing to do with what I was saying, it was still politically related. So that's the one credit I can give them. But I do find it funny that in a lot of instances I see liberal commentators on places like Twitter and Facebook that will give these two credit for, in some aspects, being very different from their own party. And there are instances where I see, oh, well, he shouldn't have said that, he shouldn't have done that. I saw, what is this? Oh, it feels like you have a split personality or something. Where did Dirk go? I'm trying to wait for him to comment again. He just disappeared like I always use the Jimmy Hoffa example. I'm gonna stop using that. Charger fell down. No, but with the commentators that are liberal, a lot of times it seems that, and I've been over this before when I did the why did they're so quickly to turn on their own. With a lot of Trump supporters, oh yeah, Rand is more popular than Ron. Although to be fair, I do think Ron has had a bigger impact on politics because he was able to get all those people to write his name in during the general election 4 years ago. I think he didn't. Some of the delegates or whatever give him some electoral votes in the last presidential election. I still think Rand is basically just lucky to have had that as a parent, and now be able to say, "Oh yeah, I'm just like my dad," or I'm in that same philosophy. Now there are two Donahues. He completely he. What is this? He used the shadow clone jutsu. Let's see here. He cloned himself. I'm starting to get reminded of get a little bit of a Ben Reilly feeling here. If you remember the Clone Saga from the from the Spider-Man comics. That's what this is reminding me of. It's like, no, I'm the real him, and then the other one's gonna go, no, I'm really him, and they're gonna find us the same person with two computer, one in the left hand, one on the right hand. He's typing with one hand for each one. That's gonna be the big revelation that sets everything apart. Is Ron better or worse in foreign affairs? You know, I really don't have the answer to that because from what I've seen, they generally agree on ugh, on foreign policy. But when it comes to issues like, for example, I know that Ron has called out the war on drugs. I don't know if Rand has, and I know that Ron had expressed opposition to Gina Haspel, Trump's CIA director nominee, before. I think didn't Rand vote for him, or he it was some grandstanding thing of, oh, I'm so sick of these people, and then he still voted for the person. So there's places where I'm sure they disagree, but I can't find in a lot of cases I don't know what one's position is on one particular country, whereas another position of the other one. I know they're both against the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which, as you remember, Dirk, is the worst humanitarian crisis in modern history, with 85,000 children deceased after being either starved to death or bombed, thanks to the U.S. and their little attempts to get as many coins as possible. They can't say anything good. Oh yeah, they don't they don't have anything of any redeeming quality in a lot of cases. Again, domestic issues, neither one of them is all that good to me. Um, would you count the Patriot Act as a domestic issue though? Because if that's the case, then yeah, they're opposed to that too. So that is redeeming as well. It's just sad to have these people who Saudi and Yemen. Well, the Saudi led campaign in Yemen. The easiest stand only a few have taken. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the full. You have to see the full funeral, but at Bush's funeral, that senator that was speaking, his name was Alan K. Simpson. He was a three-term senator from I don't remember the state, but in the years since he got out of office, he's come out as being pro-choice. And it was when I read his comment where he said that, how do we call ourselves being for limited government, and then we're for the government mandating what somebody can do with their uterus. It's like, why can't other Republicans think that way? Like, can we just get 100 copies of him and put them in the Senate if we have to have Republicans in there? Or when he came out in favor of repealing Citizens United. Oh my God, the funeral in general was insane. Oh yeah. It was filled with a bunch of speeches. It's one of the few times I've seen George W. in the last couple of years where I felt so conflicted, because usually I mock him due to what he did in office and how, like, in contemporary times, he himself and a lot of people, there was some poll that showed that I think over 60% of Americans had a favorable view of him. I was like, what? And even people in my own life, who are so, they have Trump derangement syndrome to where now they do their little revisionist history. Bush wasn't all that bad. He was a good guy. He was all right. And I think to myself, when people talk to me, especially when they're of the older variety, they pretend as if you didn't exist. Now, granted, I was in preschool and early, for all preschool for his entire tenure, but I was there. I remember Hurricane Katrina and all the idiots that he had in positions of leadership. I remember, the banks closing and that starting the worst recession since the Great Depression. The lie that got us into Iraq, not us starting in Afghanistan, but us still being there since I was 3. People have short-term memory, but it seems like people are just, they have this thing where they pick one person. They say, this is the worst we can ever get. They're so horrible, terrible. And then they get somebody else that is just as bad, worse, or slightly not as horrible. and they go, oh no, this person is even worse. Now everyone that was bad before just pretend that didn't happen. We're literally supposed to sit here and act like that didn't bother us. And policy is there will be another recession. Oh, I did a whole video about that, Dirk, about the next. I forgot its title. It's something like economic collapse or another recession coming. I have to look it up. But I did a whole breakdown of why I thought that was going to occur. It would be great to see Rand and Tulsi form some sort of anti-war coalition. Oh yes, that would be terrific. I've actually never seen Ryan in here before. Yeah, Tulsi is quite ahead of the pack when it comes to these topics, and as is Rand. I just hate that what seems to be a sort of thing where if you don't entirely stick with someone's ideology, they toss you to the wayside. That new DNC chair, what's his name, Hakeem Jeffries or whatever. There's actually clips of him from 2 years ago where he was accusing Bernie of being bought out by the NRA. The guy who's all for getting money out of politics and talking about how corrupt the system is being called corrupt, while by the current Democratic Conference or whatever that title is, while he was backing the most corrupt woman to ever walk the face of the earth. But that's how strange this stuff can get when you see some of the statements people make on TV, what they write online. One of the districts in my state of California, it's I think 48 is its number, and it was represented for 30 years by a guy named Dana Rohrabacher, and he's significant because he's called Putin's favorite congressman. Anyways, he lost to all right. He lost to a guy named Harley Ruda. And I remember distinctively that I went on Facebook and I saw some woman that was commenting about the fact that she had opposition to him, where she stated, he could, because one of the things that liberals gave him credit for was being in favor of marijuana, being legalized. So she said that he was a fake conservative for being in favor of marijuana being legalized. And think about this. He's anti, LGBT, whatever. He is anti-abortion rights, all kind of stuff that you usually associate with the conservative way of viewing social policy. And because he has this one thing that is slightly different from the rest of the Republicans, you're a liberal. But again, we live in the Twilight Zone. People can say and do whatever they want. And just get away with it. Without anyone saying, wait a second, that doesn't really make much sense. It doesn't really add up. And I guess that's kind of the way I feel about Ron and Rand Paul when they have liberal opposition, especially with, fake conservative, because he disagrees with the rest of his party on one issue. And she really was able to write that. No one said, wait, I just went on here and found, because this is public information, how he feels, how a lot of these politicians feel about majority of topics. So the bottom line, and just to wrap this up, because people I can tell are getting kind of annoyed. I see Dirk is commenting a lot less frequently, and I get it. He's hanging out with his new congressman-elect girlfriend from New York District 14. So to conclude everything, I really despise a lot of the opposition when it's not warranted. So when you have someone like Rand Paul, for example, vote to end the war, I think he should get some credit for that. I don't believe in some system where if someone doesn't agree with me on everything, I have to work to their demise. I think we can always get a better substitute. But the idea that I'm now going to pretend as if this person who is, extremely, extremely correct on a number of positions when it comes to foreign policy now should just be completely discarded because I disagree with them wholeheartedly on domestic issues. Walking around DC with it, trying to choose in the part. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's some article of her from, I think, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, after she won the election, where she said her and her partner were trying to find a place, and she was talking about you. That's exactly what went through my mind when I heard that. Ryan says Dana openly advocated for directly funding ISIS because they were against Hezbollah. Yeah, again, Ryan, that's who they will call a fake conservative because he was okay or on the point about one issue that liberals are in favor of or people that are progressive are in favor of. We already funded ISIS, just not openly. Oh yeah, of course. Kill all fronts of Rand Paul. I can only ask for the best of what he offers. Yeah, but I'm saying that that's what pissed me off about a lot of the liberal commentators when they were talking about the older Bush. He's got problems. You can call him a war criminal, all kind of, but to suggest that, again, these are people who get pissed at contemporary Republicans because they don't do anything about guns. The guy bans assault rifles, loses NRA endorsement. They say when Republicans talk about mental illness, they never do anything about it. Guy signs American with Disabilities Act. They complain about never-ending wars. Guy has 2 wars, invasion of Panama and Gulf War, and they both end. So I look at, you have to also understand this. I look at it from the perspective of that is a Republican president. So there's only going to be so many things that me and them agree with. And for the most part, I thought it was good. And, this has been the counter argument I've made when listening to all of the criticisms that have come out in the last, 8, 9 days since he died. And people have, now intensified their distaste. If it were so bad, why did it take him dying for you to talk about it? And no one seems to be able to answer that question. But I know the real reason, which is that they have a bottom line that they're trying to meet. And you can see this if you go and watch TYT's video on him with Cenk Uygur. Was right after it happened. They have a bottom line of people they're trying to appease to. And they think any of those people expects you to now condemn a person in their entirety if they don't, if they're not from your party or of your ideology. I wouldn't call the older Bush a progressive, but that was someone that I still saw redeeming things in. And I guess I look at it from the angle of all of these people have something, that I have a issue with. I have problems with Bernie, his stance on the BDS movement, pretending as if it's not something that, would hurt those in power in Israel and, go against what they're doing over there, that right-wing government that's killing innocent people. Bush better than his son is a low bar, but has a plus when compared to the modern president's best Republican I know. Yeah, I was trying to explain that this is not about searching for the greatest person ever. I'm just simply saying what I saw from them was almost a complete, like they were upset with the media's representation of them. So their idea of all this positive coverage is to now shift it around. And if you go on Fox and you look at the reception he's gotten in the comments section, you can see a similar thing. And I can't even take them seriously because, I'm forced. And this is the reality. Dirk, do you know how many times the Republicans have won the popular vote since Bush won it in 1988? You know how many times? So that's 7 presidential elections between now and then. You know how many times they won it? Just write a random number and I'll tell you the answer. Write a random number. I want to see what your estimate is. I thought you were going to write something higher. It's 1 time. So let's go down the list. They lost it in 92 to Clinton. Lost it in 96 to Clinton again, with Dole, who I also like. Lost it in 2000, won because of the Florida recount. Only in 2004, after, this horrendous terrorist attack, a year into Iraq, no one knows it's going to go on for years and years and years, were they able to have their Republican candidate, incumbent President Bush, win against Kerry, the popular vote. That's the only time. Remember, they lost it twice under Obama. So that's 2000 and 2012, and they lost it with Hillary. So that's why they really love the Electoral College, because they know if we didn't have a little stupid system where you have to win a contest here, get the most votes in that particular region or state or whatever, wiped out. Yeah. No, no, Dirk, I knew you would guess. Well, I was surprised that you put zero because I would think you would say, okay, well, there has to have been some time, you know? Yeah. You know, it's kind of scary when you think about this. They talk about how the Democrats have been wiped out at the state level and all the, but if it came to presidential elections, they would win almost every time unless they just run somebody really horrible. Like, not even think about this. Even Hillary was able to get 2 million more votes than Trump. What does that tell you? That the Republicans are not popular. And that's why when I sat there and I looked at all these people that were talking trash about the older Bush, I said to myself, wait a second, he was able to pull off all kind of things that your homeboy Trump wasn't able to do. He was able to win with the not only the popular vote, but in a landslide. You know, while your boy barely scraped to victory and actually did lose the majority of people did not want him. And arguably was the most popular president ever at the height of the Gulf War. But that, what was it, like an 84% approval rating? Yeah. Well, again, this stupid system is their key, and I have my problems with it, but a lot of people do. Uh, and I do, and I already anticipate the comments. This was supposed to be about the Pauls, and you're talking about Bush. Oh well. I think if Rand ran again, he would do better. Really, the reason Trump was able to win that primary is that all those people were in there, and then the establishment wanted Rubio, and then Cruz had more votes, and then the two of them stayed in there too long together, so they kept splitting the anti-Trump vote. On top of Trump having his little base group that stayed with him. I truly believe that if it had just been, let's say after Bush got out in South Carolina, and then if it was just Cruz and Trump, Cruz probably would have beat him. And I'm saying that as someone whose opinion of Cruz is not exactly higher than it is of Trump. It's funny. I swear it's like living in a bizarre world. I remember those first 3 years of him being in office before, Trump was in a position of power over him, and he was, calling himself against the Washington cartel and all that other nonsense, and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to sell like the rest of my party did," and then just what has he done in the last 2 years? Has been a complete Trump bootlicker. It's crazy. Just wow. The electoral complex issue. Without it, urban areas with the side elections, your flyover states have no voice, and that's where your farmers are. No. I understand its purpose to give a voice to those who to make it to where we can't have the same states that just determine everything. But the problem I have is we have people who tell me about, oh, Trump beat Hillary, and then they're telling me this as though she didn't get 2 million more votes than him. And also, I'm getting told about how I should have, me and those not third party voters like you and those non-voters messed everything up. She won by 2 million. She had 2 million more votes, and how many more millions of people have to show up for her to win this election? But again, never the candidate's fault, always the people. In some cases, actually the system, but that we're going to get into another issue there. But yeah, I get your point, Ryan. I'm not here to pretend as if the system has no purpose. I get why it's here. I just that is a fact what I brought up earlier about how many times the Republicans actually were able to get the popular vote too. So I'm gonna leave this. I hope that you took this into consideration. Again, just when you think about a lot of these politicians, think about which ones you believe have every issue in line with yourself, because I've accepted none of them do with me. Doesn't mean they're horrible. I think when you're more inclusive and more flexible to what somebody's in favor of and opposed to, you can expand the variety of people that you actually like, and give credit on certain things, because there is something commendable about these two Republican politicians that happen to be father and son, that when it comes to foreign policy, don't bootlick for the remainder of their party. I think that's very significant. And Dirk, as I gave the examples of HW, those were brought up in particular as I mentioned them in contrast to the more modern presidents, as you mentioned as well, because I don't look to start complaining about things. I go and I read up something. I say, wait a second, this doesn't sound half bad to me. It's, you know, it's someone that it's from an ideology that I usually don't like, but this is pretty tolerable. And I found him very tolerable in comparison with his successors. And I find these two much more tolerable than other contemporary members of the Republican Party. So, and a lot of other of Democrats too. So, you know, thank you for watching. Have a good night.